If you're struggling with drawing bodies for your male characters, then this will help you. Let's start with proportions, and first of all, we can divide the body, the whole body, into two halves. It means that the upper body will have the same length as the lower body. Obviously, we can experiment with this and make upper body larger or the lower body larger. But also a useful thing to actually measure stuff is a head. So basically we can divide the whole body into either 7, 7.5, 8 or 9 heads. To be honest, you can do whatever you want, but that's just the rule that I follow. So basically you have 4 heads here and 4 here. Or you can have like 3.5, 3.5, or obviously 4.5 and 4.5 for 9. So for my bodies that I usually draw, I do like 3.5 for upper body and 4 for the lower body. But it's more for like a model look where the legs are longer, but also we can divide legs into 2 equal parts. So we have upper leg and lower leg. And here we can even do something like take this head and put it here. So we can have basically like about 2 heads for the upper leg and about 2 heads for the lower leg. And if you want my brushes, they are for free in link below, but you also get 30 art tips that will help you improve your art in 30 days. And when it comes to proportions of the arms, obviously they start from a shoulder line, and let's take a brush, from a shoulder line, then they go down. But the elbow sits at around the bottom of the rib cage, or about like a waist level. So basically we can put waist in like a middle of the whole body. And the wrist sits at around pubic level. And what it does, it basically makes the upper arm have the same length as the lower arm. So basically an arm can have either from this part here to the middle, to the wrist to also the middle. And this is half and half. But now we can also do like from the shoulder, from the top of the shoulder to elbow, and from elbow to the knuckles. And this will have also the same length as this. Now, the biggest difference between male and female characters is the waist and the hips and shoulders. So here we have a female character, and basically female shoulders are usually narrower than the male ones. And also they usually align with the hips. They are sometimes bigger or a little bit smaller or the same, as you can see here. Now for the male character, you can see that we have our shoulders here, and they are wider than our hips. And here you can see that the hips are narrower than the shoulder, and usually female hips are more like a skirt and the male are more like a rectangle. So here you see that they are wider than the male hips. Also, to get this length here of our shoulders, I guess a whole body, wide body, we can basically for male characters take 2 lengths of their heads and turn it like 90 degrees so it lays like that, and then we can place here 2 heads. For female characters we can do 1.5. So basically we put 1 head here and half around here, and that would be the length of the shoulders. And obviously the hips would be around the same level, the same size. Now let me show you a basic landmarks that we can use for drawing a basic skeleton. And here for that, make a color green, and basically I use a head as a simple either ball, or I'll add like a simple jawline to that, but a ball is enough. So then I obviously have a rib cage, for the rib cage, a sternum, okay, then the thoracic arch here, then I'll obviously have clavicles, and we can look at these points here. So basically the bottom of the thoracic arch, here is the sternum, the clavicles, okay, boom. And that's for torso. Obviously the thoracic arch can be useful whenever you're rendering and drawing. And now I use also shoulders, I use elbow and wrists. So these are good to like, we can see that we can draw a simple arm with only this. Okay, so we have shoulder, elbow, and wrist. Now I go and actually I'll usually do this line here, the middle of the torso. Then I also use navel, a belly button, and then a simple hips. So basically the hip bone that is protruding here, I use that. Also pubic bone, and basically here I make like a underwear shape, and I use that sometimes. Then we obviously have here the knee, which is also useful to show and draw. Then obviously feet, a simple like feet, boom. And these are pretty much every landmarks that I use that are really good to think about whenever you're drawing, or even like building a base for your character. And then we have obviously gestures. So gestures are super important whenever you're drawing pretty much every character. So what I mean by that, basically we want to use curves like CSI, and with that we want to construct our character. So basically turn every body part into each curve. So here we can take this pose here and use curves to actually show that. So basically we have a head here, it can be a simple bow. Now the neck, either it is a little bit forward or like to the side or whatever. I usually do that. Then we have our torso. So either we can do like one line here, a little bit curve, a little bit C curve, or we can actually follow through and do a whole curve here. You also can like exaggerate. So whenever you're drawing like basically from this, you can either do something like that. Boom. Here we can do either like another C curve, like that something, or we can do like an S curve. And I actually prefer doing S curve because we can, with this curve here, we can show this. So let's erase it, and we can basically make something like that. Boom. And then this curve here that flows into feet. So it would be something like that. Boom. Boom. And it's super important to actually make those lines, like see here, flow into each other. So basically this line goes like that. Boom. It's an arrow pointing down to the feet. But also let's erase that. Whenever we're looking at like a curve like that, it's also pointing us up. So boom, boom. And here we have our torso, which is also pointing us in one direction. And for example, here it can be a simple base. Here we have shoulders and hips. And basically with these curves, we can actually guide the eye of our viewer, the person that looks at our drawing, and point his eyes into the most important part of your drawing. So here we can see even with this curve here, we can point it like here, also with this arm, boom, or we can like point it somewhere else, like there's something else. So it's pretty important to break the body into curves. Now, then we want to actually break the character into basic shapes. And for that, we can use like simple ovals, spheres, okay, boom, cylinders, even like squares, cubes. Let me show you. So basically I usually break the torso into either like an egg shape, okay, something like that, boom, boom, with thoracic arch and sternum, then hips as a simple underwear, boom, shape. Now we can hide it and we see it's simple. Okay, now the waist can be either like a, just like a line like that, boom. Now for shoulders, I do a simple ovals. Now for arms, upper arms, I usually do like a cylinders, boom, this, boom. Now for the other, obviously like it can be a ball, the elbow, the other arm, the lower arm, same as here, boom, boom. Obviously here we have this oval for our shoulder. Now the same obviously applies to the other arm, so another cylinder. Now we want to break the body into simple shapes. One, because it will make it super simple to draw. You don't have to, you know, like see all these details and muscles and stuff. You can just simplify into basic cylinders, ovals, and whatever. But then it's actually much easier to draw it whenever you need in perspective. So it's much easier to draw a cylinder in perspective than it is to draw an arm with all the muscles. Basically, we can see that this shows us that we see the bottom of this, which this is above our horizontal line, boom. And if it was something like that, boom, it's below. We can see the top, here we can see the bottom, okay? So like these shapes are super important to see the perspective. Also, whenever we have like a cylinder that goes like that, it goes at us. But yeah, legs, we can either also like a simple ball here and then cylinder here, boom. Okay, the knee can be either like a ball again or like a cube. Now the lower one, boom, also a cylinder, another cylinder, boom, a ball, another cylinder, boom. Feet can be either like a simple triangle or like whatever you want the shape can be. But here you can see that we have a simple body already. Now let's add also like a ball for our head and a simple neck, boom. We can see that we have a simple mannequin for our body. But sometimes I actually make these shapes a little bit different. So what I mean by that, instead of using a cylinder, I use something like a cylinder with a triangle here. So the shape looks more like this, boom, boom. And whenever we take it like that here, we can see that it's a little bit different, but still we can break it into a cylinder, boom, with a triangle up top. It makes like more appealing shapes, okay? Now speaking of appealing shapes, we can do a simple trick where whenever we draw like a boring shape, we can either make it taper, okay, it's more interesting, or we can even make it, so we can make it curve and also have different sides. So here we can do like a straight line, and here you can have a curved line. It also, you see that it tapers. Now for bottom leg, I usually do a simple cylinder that obviously tapers, but now for the actually calves muscle, I add a simple triangles to the overall silhouette, but it does look more like a leg. Also for the lower arm, I do the same thing where we have a simple cylinder, but I also add those triangles. And it's also good to keep them at an offset. So basically here you can see that it's a basic cylinder here, boom, with a triangle here and triangle here. And offset a little bit like here, boom, boom. So now we can draw a simple, like a skeleton that we can use. So here would be neck, shoulders, there would be our hips, our torso, which takes 2/3 or like a little bit around that base. Here would be our hips, here shoulders, maybe make this a little bit narrower. Here can do simple torso, boom, and hips. And now it would be the middle, so we can make this here, boom, a simple triangle here. Now the other leg here, boom, and now arms, elbow, wrist. And basically like male characters, like the overall silhouette would be more wider. So that's what we can use to draw any character we want. We have all landmarks and all the useful stuff that we need. So now let me show you how to actually draw a male character. So basically I always start with a head. Now let's add a simple neck, a gesture for the body, add shoulders, the lower body, the hip line, boom. Now we can add a simple shapes for our body, shoulders, a little bit wider. Okay, now let's add the gestures for our legs. So this goes like here. Let's make a small curve here, feet here, another feet here. Boom. Now let's make arms. So here would be elbow, and here would be our wrists. Our wrist with hands. Now let's add some more details. So basically we can draw our chest and our rib cage. Okay, let's add a simple clavicle here. There would be a shoulder. Let's add some like loose details for now. Our neck, can make it a little bit wider. Our traps, we can actually make them more buff. Now this we need to push. And here we can do simple torso, that, boom. It would be a little bit above this part here. We have pecs. Now here would be our pecs. We can make them a little bit bigger. Also here. So now here is our clavicle. Let's add some shoulders, boom. We can also erase that. Okay, so this goes like that. Here would be an arm. Obviously this is our elbow. Okay, boom. Now for other arm here, do something like that. And now the shoulder here. Obviously this goes, so the chest muscle go below the shoulders. So here that would be like a triangle here, boom. Now here would be our belly button. You can add a simple pelvis here, boom, boom. Obviously here would be abs. So we can make, basically we can lower this navel here, make a little bit above that. Our abs, boom, boom. So now basically here the shoulder would go between the bicep muscle that is here and a triceps. That, boom, boom, and between that shoulder that goes in. We'd have our forearm like that here, boom. Obviously here are simple bend like this, boom. And this stage is more to just quickly lay some shapes, but also let's now do the lats here, boom. So they basically wrap around here. We can see from this. Obviously the arm here would go a little bit that, and kinda wraps around, probably make it like. Now for abs, we don't want to make them perfect, okay? We can use simple, like a little bit something between them and make them not that perfect. Crooked lines, okay? Okay, something like that, boom, boom. That would be our obliques here on the side, boom, boom. Then it basically goes like this here, boom. Here we have a pubic bone and stuff. Now this obviously goes like that down, but to be honest we can actually push this silhouette here a little bit more, like that. Okay, something like this, and perhaps this a little bit forward, with also chest a little bit forward. Okay, now for the legs. So basic shapes like this for now will be great. Okay, boom, boom. Now here obviously a ball, a lower leg, boom. Obviously ball, boom, boom. We have this. Okay, so now we want to add some volume to these legs. So basically we can first draw the back of our leg. This here we have like a sartorius muscle that goes from this, and it's basically attaches to somewhere around the knee. So this leg is more like that. The knee here would be not like that, maybe push it a little bit up. So this goes basically like this. Boom, boom. Here we have our bottom leg here. Boom, boom. We see our this, and we can actually push that a little bit higher. Obviously here would be like quads and stuff, but we can group it a little bit like that. Actually erase this, put one here, add some lines here. Boom. Now simple feet. Boom. Like this. Now this part here, something like this. Maybe more chunkiness. And obviously if we wanted muscles here, then between here be another one. Okay, basically it's a part of quads. Obviously there we have this muscles here. Boom, boom. There's a sartorius one. Now from the side we also have this muscle here. Boom. Basically we can see them. There's this one here, there's another one, and this attaches to this. Boom, boom. Here this muscle is here. Okay, like that. There we have a sartorius here. Let's clean this a little bit. Boom. Now this here looks like a teardrop. See here. Boom, boom. That. Then obviously here it would go like that. Boom, boom. Now here would be a simple calves here, and like a bone, and boom. And I do a little bit more of these in my new Patreon's tutorial for drawing simple bodies. You can check it out in the description below. But yeah, now what we can do is basically make a new layer, lower this one, and then go and just now draw some details more, like maybe this jaw here, boom, which is a little bit smaller, basically like that. Goes to shoulder, boom, boom, shoulders. It looks like bowling balls, bicep. And basically in this point we want to go and refine our sketch, our messy sketch. So yeah, to quickly recap everything, first we start with a simple skeleton, okay, then we build a simple shapes on top, and then we do like a sketch level, so we can see here. Then on top of that sketch level we go and refine with like a new layer and like a harder brush. So it's a really simple way to draw a male character body. So yeah, this is how I draw a simple male body, and if you're struggling with drawing a female body, you can check out this video and it will help you. Bye.